So I recently read an article in which a prominent bishop in the Church of England said that the opening words of the Our Father may be problematic because of an association with patriarchy. And of course, the takeaway here is that when two things are different and somehow need to work together, or at least be reconciled in the mind of a person who is trying to accommodate both, it's likely that one or both are going to have to change. And in this case, we're talking about a fundamental defining characteristic in Christianity, the Lord's Prayer, and its incompatibility with modern assumptions about morality informed by creeds like feminism, liberalism, and egalitarianism. And in this case, it isn't that they both need to change or that they both need to make concessions, it's just that Christianity needs to change because it's the problematic one. Patriarchy in this case is assumed to be an evil that just has to be suppressed. That's a given. And since it may be associated with titles like Father for God, then it's clearly problematic. And this way of thinking isn't exclusive to the Church of England, which is why I feel like I can talk about it. I could take a survey among Mass-going Catholics at the parish that is close to my house, and I guarantee more than a few would sympathize with this criticism of the Lord's Prayer, so called because it's the one that Jesus himself taught us. What I think this reveals is where a person's fundamental ethical loyalty lies. When they consider some sort of moral dilemma, where do they turn to first for inspiration? Is it to what the Christian creed says, or is it some foreign incompatible creed? Because modern liberalism and feminism are incompatible with Christianity. If they weren't, then neither would have to change in order to be reconciled. Like, imagine someone who is developing an astronomy curriculum for the school that they work at, and then when they present it to their superiors for review, they complain that there isn't enough content in there about zodiac signs. I would imagine that the drafter of the curriculum would want to point out that this was about astronomy and not astrology. Astronomy as a true science is mutually exclusive to astrology and has no use for it, so to try to force it in there would be to do violence to the subject matter. It's like these two things are not compatible, and to try to force their compatibility requires that one or both be severely damaged if not destroyed in the process. And for some reason with liberal Christianity, it's always Christianity that needs to change in order to conform to some fleeting popular currents of thought. And I can understand why someone who opposes Christianity would want to transplant other ideologies into it for its destructive potential, but it's insane that any Christian would want to do the same thing. And that brings me to a question that I wish more Christians would spend time reflecting on, which is what happens when a perfect being and an imperfect being encounter one another and they both desire communion, they both desire intimacy, they both desire relationship with one another. Because according to Christianity, this isn't a hypothetical question. This describes our situation with God. God is perfect, we are imperfect, and we both want reconciliation and friendship. But that relationship isn't natural to us who are imperfect. It doesn't just happen on its own. Why? Because it's like trying to mix water and oil, or to fit two incompatible puzzle pieces together. There's a fundamental discord there which cannot be resolved unless the imperfect being changes to become more like the perfect being. The perfect being can't change because the only kind of change possible for a perfect being is one in which they become less perfect. Like, think of a perfect circle. There is no change you can make to a perfect circle that wouldn't result in it becoming an imperfect circle. And because there is this incompatibility between us and God, we should also expect that we will discover things about ourselves, our character, our ideas and beliefs, our understanding that will surprise us and likely be unpleasant to us. Because change for an entity that wants to remain static is hard and unpleasant. It often requires suffering and hard work, and it's much easier to insist that the other party change than to submit to that process ourselves. So we should be prepared that this will be a temptation for us, and one that we should try to guard against. When God reveals himself and reveals truth to us, if all we hear are things that we perfectly already agree with, then we should probably second guess that, because the only way that would be possible is if we are already perfect ourselves, which is unlikely, or that this supposed truth isn't actually coming from God who is perfect. When we work towards the change that God wants for us, we should anticipate that he will tell us things we don't want to hear because we're the ones who have to change. One of the things that we maybe don't want to hear because of its incompatibility with our presuppositions or our social acceptance is that In God's creation, he designed masculinity to lead and to initiate in certain ways. Christianity is a patriarchal creed. It's right there in the history titles of our leaders. They were and are called patriarchs. These are the highest ranking bishops in the church. So as you encounter this within Christianity, as you will in certain places in scripture, and in this case in the Lord's Prayer, if you find concepts like this offensive, then this is probably one of those opportunities to take an inventory of your attachments and your imperfections that need to change in order to be conformed to the one who is perfect. So if you're a Christian, that is to say that the Christian creed and the teachings of Jesus are supposed to shape your thinking before all other competing ideologies, then it should be obvious to you that where Christianity and something like liberal egalitarianism depart company, Christianity is true and the latter is false, which should lead you to conclude that it is the latter that is the problematic one and the latter that needs to be reformed and changed. Christianity is the truth, the one that you draw from first before all other ideologies. And if you have those things reversed, then how is it that you can sincerely say that you are a Christian? If it's Christianity that is always bending to the influential winds of your liberalism or your socialism or your feminism, then you're only a Christian to the degree that it is compatible with your other ideologies, which obviously in this case come first. But it is interesting to me how people can clearly prefer some other philosophy or theology to their Christianity, but still think of themselves and call themselves Christians, and probably even object to the accusation I seem to be making here that they are liberals or feminists first, and then Christians second. It must be an easy mistake to make because it seems so pervasive in the church today. And I think perhaps the reason that is the case is because Christianity is loyal to the truth first and foremost. This means that if there are hints of the truth in other creeds, other cultures, other systems of belief, which there often are, Christianity can be receptive to and even endorse the portions of alternative creeds which align to the truth which Christianity is loyal to. And this, in my mind, is actually evidence that Christianity is a messenger and loyalist to the truth. Because if your creed only has a fraction or a fragment of the truth, then all other creeds will only ever appear to be a rival to you. Like, imagine a school that has just been endowed with a generous donation, and all the different departments are arguing about how it should be used. The science department wants new labs to be built, the athletic program wants a new gymnasium, the English department wants a new library. They're all advocating for something good, but it's only a portion of whatever it is that we mean when we talk about education as a whole. And because they aren't thinking of the whole of the enterprise of education, they treat each other as rivals because they only have partial goods. But one who is committed to education as such would be able to see the good in all of their proposals. This is how Christianity has always been able to affirm what is good in other creeds while rejecting what is false. That's why it calls false teachings heresy instead of just merely false. A heresy isn't all wrong all the way through. Heresy means a distortion of the truth. It means there are some good approximations to the truth, but it's also mixed with falsehoods as well. In using that kind of language, the church is saying that instead of being a mere rival to Christianity, there is some good there, but also problems that need correction. This is why other creeds don't tend to use terms like heresy, because when you only have a fragment of what is good, and some alternative only has some other fragment, then you are nothing more than mere rivals to each other. But Christianity, which possesses both of those fragments and more, can look at both of them with some sympathy. But to do that, you have to be really well informed about the subtle distinctions between the things that are compatible and the things that are not. And it seems that it's really easy for a lot of people to find themselves endorsing the whole of some other creed while still deluding themselves that they are remaining faithful to their Christianity. And then the next thing they know, they are allowing that alternative creed to shape their thinking and their practice of Christianity. Well, I think this is a forgivable mistake for Christians to make, like lay Christians. Leaders like theologians, clergy, and bishops who should understand those distinctions have no excuse falling for this trap. So when we see bishops doing this kind of thing, it's really hard to interpret as anything other than malicious when they do it. And unfortunately, this is something the church has to guard against. When we see bishops underscoring incompatibilities between Christianity and some other belief system, which of course there are, if they say that Christianity is the one who should change, then it should be clear to the rest of us where their loyalties lie. If you're a Catholic who is a leader in your profession and you're like me, you probably had some desire for more opportunities to network with other Catholic professional leaders in order to help each other grow professionally, spiritually, and economically. Because this is exactly what we're doing with Fisher's Network. We're mobilizing Catholic professionals and economic leaders into local crews so that they can better support one another in the hopes of building up something like a local Catholic economy. As they do so, they can better support their parish in a variety of ways. Imagine as a parish having a group of experts you can turn to for advice and support on business decisions that have to be made. This is why pastors participate in our crews as well. They get business mentorship while having the opportunity to build up leaders in their community. So if this sounds like a way to strengthen your local Catholic community or parish, consider becoming a member by visiting fishersnetwork.com.